Merilyn. Welcome back to Season 3, Episode 1 of Real Estate, Wealth, and Overall Health.
Yeah, and what we're going to be doing this year, at least for the first few episodes, is we're really going to talk about certain things that we see in the industry. Today, we're going to be talking about upsizing and kind of what everything you need to know about upsizing. So if you're looking to upsize, if you've thought of it, if you don't know where to start, hopefully a lot of this stuff will help you. And if you do want your own consultation, you can message us on here. You could send us an email to info@amrg.ca to book a consultation. But we're here to help, and we do this all the time. So this is natural for us, right? To go. We've helped hundreds of families upsize, and they're all happy. But the thing that I do notice is that people even want to upsize, but they don't know where to start, or there's like a hesitation there. Like, I'm sure you've seen that too. Like, what do you think some of the hesitations are when people want to move? Because we have clients that say, hey, I want to upsize, and then they really don't do it for 2 years or maybe 3 years, or maybe they don't do it at all, and it's like a shame when we know that they need to, right? What do you feel?
I think the number one reason for hesitation is usually it's financial. They want to know, what can I get, especially in a market right now where we're still more into like a balanced buyer's market. That's where you start questioning, am I going to be able to, what can I get for my house when I sell? And then what am I going to be able to buy? What does that look like? So I think a lot of that comes around the numbers. Interest rates right now, they've held so far. So I think that's, people just getting used to the new norm of the interest rate climate and just working out all their numbers and what that looks like. Because obviously there's other fees as well when you're selling, disposing, and purchasing. So I think it's first and foremost is always the numbers, because even sometimes I'll just myself browse online at beautiful bigger homes and in the neighborhood that I live, that I'd like to continue to reside, and you just it's almost like a fantasy. Oh, can I afford this? And I don't know, what would I be able to sell my house for? And then going through getting it ready and listing it and all the showings, and then waiting for an offer, and knowing that it's we're more in still a buyer's market. I think that's the number one factor. And I would say number two is maybe sometimes they want to make a change to a different neighborhood. And sometimes that change in the unknown is, people get a little bit nervous about that type of thing. They want to know about, the parks or the schools, if they have children, depending on what their needs and wants are. If they don't really know too much about the area, they sometimes may just kind of postpone that decision to make that move because they're just not sure where they even want to be. A lot of the times we get that. There's, the wish list it could be 4 different areas that are like an hour apart from each other. They don't know for sure where they would want to go. Yeah,
that's great. So Merilyn basically gave us an overview of what we're going to talk about today, because we have about 4 or 5 things that are, the main things that either could be stumbling blocks for someone looking to upsize. And today, I think we want to go through those, and we'll talk about experience that we've seen, on the negative side, maybe on the positive, what's helped people do that, and how they, have gone on to the next, their next move. And again, these are things that we will sit down with clients, and we have a full seminar. So either if we're doing a seminar or if we're doing a one-on-one guide, we talk about this, and we try to, ask the right questions so that we can get clients onto the next step, because a lot of them want to do that. I guess one of the biggest things that I find, and this is, I guess, the first thing to look at when you are talking to someone about upsizing, I think, is the motivation. And when I say motivation, I'm talking about there has to be something there in order to make a person move. And if it's a couple, both people have to be on the same page. If you have one person wanting to move and the other one doesn't, you can take them to a million houses that could all fit their needs. But if one person doesn't have that motivation to move, they're never moving, especially if it's the decision maker. And I find that when people buy their first house, let's say it's a couple, you may not have kids, you may not have pets, you're buying because you're young and you want to get into your first house. It could be a condo. So you're looking at what's best for you. You're looking at nightlife. You might be looking about restaurants around. You might not need a huge space. But as soon as things change, then it doesn't become about you. It becomes about maybe a larger space, a larger family. And that changes. And that's one of the things that could be motivation. Like what do you see for motivation? Like when you see, because we've had clients that say, hey, we want to upsize, we want to make a move, and you don't hear from them, and then 2 years later, all of a sudden, like, we got to move like a month ago.
Yes.
And the reason for that sometimes is like maybe they're expecting or they've already had a child. But what are some factors that you've seen, or what are things that happen that you feel like people need to move, or what motivates people to move, let's say?
So I would say a couple things. So I would say, number one, like you said, usually the family's growing. So sometimes we have clients that they were just single at the time. So like you said, they just had a 1-bedroom condo, and that's what made sense for them financially, their price point and what they could buy at the time. Now all of a sudden they have a partner, and now they're, living together, and then they're growing their family. So all of a sudden it's like, oh, this 1-bedroom condo is just not gonna, it's gonna be, we're tight, we need more space, we've outgrown the space. So then they usually, like, a nice step up from a condo would be maybe like a semi-detached or a townhouse, or ideally a detached if that's within their budget. So usually I think that's kind of the number one reason that we see. I think it could also be, again, just change in location. Sometimes when two people come together, maybe one partner was living in Hamilton and the other partner's living downtown Toronto, but they say, okay, let's get something that's more convenient. Like, let's say maybe we can move towards Mississauga, Etobicoke borderline, so that it's kind of, if one works in Hamilton and one's downtown, that it's, makes sense for them, geographically, for how they're going to commute to and from work, especially now that a lot more companies have mandated back to work, right? Where before it was more, you could work from home. We've heard that.
Yes.
And I would say also sometimes circumstances change. We've had clients that say, this is a big one where, our parents, there's an estate that has been sold, they've been gifted money, or they've come into money inheritance, or the parents have decided to help them out because they're getting married. And then now all of a sudden they say, you know what, we want to buy something. So that would be an upgrade for them as well.
Yeah.
So I would say financial, the family's growing, sometimes the work. Those are usually the
3 big ones
that we hear.
Yeah, those are big. Like, I remember having someone who had a dog, and they were expecting, and they had like a 2-bedroom condo townhouse, and it was great for them. And then, like, as soon as the kid came, and toys were all over the place, and and Buster wasn't a little puppy anymore and needed a backyard, it was like within 2 or 3 months, like we sold them, we bought them, and they were more open to even the price that they would get for their property, and even on the price they would have to pay, right? Because when motivation's there, you start listening a little bit more to what market value is. You try pricing it more accordingly, so it really helps. And so if you're in a situation right now where you're thinking of moving, and you maybe have a spouse or a partner that doesn't want to do that, or you're even nervous yourself, and you're maybe working out of an office that's actually a den, that's actually a second TV room, that's actually a spare bedroom, which we've seen, there is hope. It's just, planning that. So I think the motivation there is getting, 2 people or even 1 person on that page, and then moving them forward. So that would be, like, I think the first thing when you have a conversation. I think after that, if you aren't renting and you own a property and want to upsize, I think a very important thing is figuring out what your property value is, and figuring out what kind of money you're going to have to put down. Because we've had people come to us and we're like, yeah, my house is worth $900,000. I'm like, yeah, it's worth $900,000. Like, so, and they start doing the math, take off their mortgage, like, I have X amount to put down. The reality of it is that you have to take into account, commissions for realtors, lawyer fees, land transfer tax. And that's the kind of conversations we have. Because it's not, unfortunately, it's not, whatever you sell for is not always what you're going to have in hand. It is an expensive move. And we always try to tell people to kind of, when you're in your first house, it's usually a 3 to 7 year time frame. After that, you're probably into like a maybe 10 to 20 year home, like a longer term home. So you try to push to get the space you need. Like, do you feel like when you're having conversations with people about property value or like upsizing, what do they kind of, what kind of conversations do you have around like property value, around money, or around how to, prepare to get them to the next step? What do you talk about?
I think the first step would be sitting down, like you said, and having a casual exploratory conversation around what's their wish list, what are the locations that they're looking at, what are things that are important to them. Like, for example, like we said earlier, if they like parks in the area because they have a dog, or they like hiking and they want to, cycle and use of trails. So just trying to kind of help guide them into what locations would be good for them. And again, maybe they want to be close to highway access because they, want to be at work within downtown Toronto within maximum no more than 30-minute drive. We hear that sometimes. So I think being able to just look at all the things that are important to them and trying to make notes and sort of guide them as to what areas would be good and what's on their wish list. I think that's one part of this conversation. And I think then the other part would be giving them a real-time valuation of what their property, what they could get if they were to sell it, so that again, you kind of know how much money are you working with, how much money essentially do you have to go shopping, because the numbers have to make sense too, right? We don't want to put them in a position where then they can't afford what they want. And sometimes we have that actually. We've had that a few times within the last couple of months where they were looking in one area and then they found that for better value, they actually could get more of what they wanted. It was in Mississauga and they were looking out in Orangeville. So it just made more sense. They could get more bang for their buck in Mississauga. So they actually stayed closer, because once we factored in and they were an upsize.
Yeah, because that was commute. That was commute time too. So that was like what you were talking about before, right?
Exactly,
is the amount of time versus money versus location. Like these are all things that they were nervous about, and you were able to get them through that, right?
The husband worked in Mississauga, so for them to have decided, okay, let's make the move to Orangeville, because they lived in Mississauga in a condo, and they sold a condo with us and purchased a detached house with a basement apartment, 2-bedroom basement apartment that can bring them income of approximately $1,800 a month, then that made more sense when we looked at that versus the house they were looking in Orangeville for the same amount of money, didn't have the basement apartment, needed a little bit of work, and the husband would have had to do a commute of at least an hour, not even in winter, and then wintertime tack on another 20 minutes, an hour and 20 minutes one way just to get to and from work. So it just made more sense for them once we kind of broke it down. And they found something they liked in Mississauga.
And I feel like, after you get your property value, so like the step 2 would be get property value, have a realtor come in and get an evaluation. You may think, you know what your property is. And a lot of times, like, the client is very knowledgeable and they may be correct, but then you got to do the numbers. You're like, look, are you getting any gifts? Are you married and you have money left for a down payment? Figure out what your land transfer taxes are, take off commissions and see what you're working with. Also see like, if you're able to port your mortgage, or if there's going to be a penalty on your mortgage, or is it better to get a new mortgage, right? And just break the mortgage that you're currently in. So these are conversations that we have. And I feel like once you do the math, that will basically tell you what you can afford where, because a lot of people come to us like, I want to be here, there, and everywhere. But until you know how much money you have to work with, that basically will tell you, that will eliminate maybe a lot of places to look, and it'll help you narrow down and focus on the places that you can afford that fit your needs. So if you need 4 bedrooms and you can't afford, like High Park or the Kingsway, then that's going to put you in a different area. But at least you know that, hey, if I need 4 bedrooms, this is where I can be. And you focus on that area to get and fulfill your needs, right? So I think number 2 would be, you have motivation, you have property value, and figure out how much money you have at the end of the day to use to move forward. After that, I think, and part of that would be understanding the numbers. So as we're saying too, it's like selling commission, land transfer tax, lawyers' fees. Some people have savings. Can you pull them out of an RSP? So these are all the conversations that we have with people. And I feel like when you start looking at the numbers and people understand the reality of it, either they're going to say, well, no, we're good, or yes, we can move. And what I found interesting, and let me know if you feel the same, is that sometimes people want to stay in a budget of, let's say like $850,000 or $900,000, let's say a budget. But you might show them something at like $1 million and they have the money, or they can stretch there. And like in the past, we've had people with rental potential and they're okay to rent in the basement until they need that space. And technically, by spending that extra money, they're getting a larger house or in a better location, and they're technically paying less a month because they have that rental income, right? So these are all things that we can talk about with our clients to help them get a better understanding of their needs, because, just searching aimlessly or blindly, it's like going, trying to say, I need a new car, and you go to the, a dealership and there's Toyota, Honda, Jag, Land Rover, you don't know where to go because you don't know what you want to spend, right? So I feel like that's very important. I mean, we have helped a few people last year upsize, and, what did you feel? I feel like each one was a little different, but similar. Like, we had St. Clarence.
Yes.
And, we've had a few just now.
Yeah.
And
Keystone, Webb, we've had a few.
And I think the big thing was with a lot of them is that when they made that decision and they were motivated to move, even the asking prices, everything came down. Like we had clients in the past that their expectations for the house were literally hundreds of thousands of dollars more than what they actually got. And they've moved. And now after that process, they're much happier in the new house. It meets more of their needs. But without that motivation and an agent telling you, where you should be, you can get stuck very easily trying to upsize, but you're at a wrong price. You don't really want to move. You feel like stuff is coming in, but nothing is like, oh, this house is no good. This house is no good, because you really just don't want to move from your house. Like, I'm sure you find that.
Yeah, you're stuck in neutral. You just can't go forward, and you just, you're on the market. You can't go backwards. So
yeah, you're like, why? Well, I can't look until I sell, but you're overpriced because you really don't want to sell. And then you're like, this is a good fit for you. Well, we haven't sold yet, and I don't like the color of the walls. Like, there's all excuses. As soon as your house is sold, I feel like every house becomes, a good option. But until you sell, everything, is not. So that's my experience. So maybe you can talk about this a little bit. The next, I think, important thing, and you touched on this, but it's money versus value. And when I talk about that, I talk about someone may, let's say, have a budget of 1.2 million, right? And that 1.2 million could buy you, like a townhouse, let's say,
so
maybe in High Park.
1.2 million where?
But that's what I'm saying. Okay. So that's where money to value comes. Like, I'm sure we've seen that where, some people want to upsize, and do they want to stay downtown and maybe end up with a townhouse with no garage? Or do they want to take that 1.2 and move out to maybe Mississauga or Vaughan or something and get more of a traditional home, right? That's like a big conversation. Like, and I'm sure you've seen that. And how do you get people around that? Or what do we kind of do to move them along in terms of, where they want to be?
I think the first thing is like you said, looking at, well, what can our budget, if it is 1.2, what does that allow us? Because some areas of Toronto, we sold one in High Park that didn't even, it sold actually over 1.5 for a completely renovated turnkey. It had no parking. It was street parking only, actually, where St. Joseph's Hospital is. So I think identifying, like, some people, some of our clients, and myself included, I really like that, being able to park in a garage for safety, for not having to, scrape the snow in the winter months, especially with the winter we've had, off of my car. And it's just, I like that. So for some people, we have a client right now that just sold actually on Monday night with us, and they don't care for a garage. So she said, I'm good with just, a driveway. I don't need a garage. So don't even include that on the search, because we set her up on a search now to look to buy something. So I would say identifying what are the important parts, and then looking at, okay, with 1.2, what areas do we want to be in? So do they want to be more on the west side? Do they want to be south of, let's say, Bloor Street, because they want to be a little bit closer to the Gardner? They want to be closer to the water. So I think once you kind of narrow down, that's the first conversation I like to have, is usually budget and then also the location, so that we can look at what does our money buy there. And then a lot of times we'll have that conversation and say, well, what if we could, for 1.2, we go a little bit further west to, let's say, maybe Long Branch area, and I'm a big fan because that's where I live, or let's say even Lakeview, what does that look like, which is on the border of Etobicoke, Mississauga, and then how much more or how much less would that give me? Usually it's how much more. We would offer them something less, but just having options for them and being able to present them and then showing what that kind of looks like. Because a lot of times, like we mentioned with the earlier file that we had, that we're thinking to buy in Orangeville, and then we went out and looked at probably 20 homes over 2-3 visits that we went out, and then they ended up buying in Mississauga because it just made more sense. So I always think that looking at it in that way first just helps. What would my money be able to buy me in this section versus another, right? And then some people, they're okay with having something that has multiple levels, where right now we have a client that specifically only wants a bungalow. So there's going to be less options for that as well.
I feel too like, I hate to say this, but the people who can afford less are easier to work with because it's simple. If you can only afford, $800,000 or $600,000, that's going to put you in only certain areas, and you just focus there. When you have a bigger budget, the conversations that we end up having, as Merilyn said, would be like, okay, do you want to still stay? Because some people still want that, want to be in the core, right? So they get a smaller house, but sometimes they're not finding what they want in the core. So then the conversation is, how far out would you prefer to be, or where would you like to be that might give you more room? And then you start showing them other areas and locations, and then you start looking at the schools and stuff if they have children. And a lot of times they start realizing that by moving out for that same price point, they're getting a little bit more money. It's still manageable for work and stuff like that, and it's a house that will last them longer term. So that's another important thing about the money versus value, and that's something that we also discuss in our seminar and in our one-on-one conversations with people upsizing. So that again is the fourth thing, and it's very important, is your money and versus value and location. And before we move on, I just wanted to say, if you like what you're hearing about upsizing, I do want to let you know that we do seminars over the course of the year, or we could sit down one-on-one to come up with a plan and go over these points with you to get you ready to make a move this year. So if you would like that, you're more than welcome to reach out. We're on Instagram at a.m.realty.group. You can Google myself or Merilyn. Our number is 416-998-2578 or
416-728-7701.
You can email us at info@amrg.ca, and we look forward just to helping you out. So with that being said, let's move on to I think one of the biggest questions. This is like the biggest one for an upsizer or even a downsizer, but this is the biggest question. And the question is, and we get this all the time, do I buy or do I sell first? So I'm going to let Merilyn take this first, and then I'll add to it, but I want to hear what she has to say. So in a market, do you buy or do you sell first?
So I would always say, what I always do is I sell first. I like to know what I'm working with. What does my budget look like for my next property? So what I would do is first say, let's sit down and look at what are the days on market in your immediate area. Let's look at recent comparables that have sold, so we have a good idea as to what we would be looking at if we were to put the house up for sale and what we would be getting, and looking at the net as well, like what are all the amounts that have to, what would I be left with to go shopping with essentially. And then I would also create a realistic timeline from that point. So I would always say sell first. That's what I always do, because I know we'll always find something that we will buy, or the worst case scenario, you could go into like a short-term nice property, you could lease for a couple of months, something like that, or live with extended family. So I'm lucky because my parents, they spend a couple months out of the year. They're there right now in Florida. We have a place in Hollandale Beach.
Must be nice.
It is really nice. So I could even just go there if I, let's say, were to sell this month and I had nowhere to go. So there's always those options as well. So you'll never be without a place to go, usually. So I would always say sell first, because then I just don't want the pressure of, if I bought, then I feel as the days add up, that pressure of I'm not getting an offer, what's happening, am I gonna have to carry 2 properties, what if I can't close? To me, that's just very stressful. So I'd rather Sell first. What about yourself? Do you buy or sell first?
Well, I think what people want to hear here, and I heard what you said, is I think what people want to know is the implications, whether when you're buying or selling first, right? In the case of buying first, that means that you found the property you like, you've put a deposit down, let's say it's $1 million property, usually it's 5%, so you have $50,000 down. Now, if you firm up on that, it's a firm deal. Yes. During that time, you're probably on the market. Now, in a case if your house shows really well or it sells quickly or there's not a lot of inventory, you're going to sell quickly and there's not an issue. However, in today's market or in a general normal market that's like even or more of a buyer's market, you're going to have to be, number one, priced at market value, if not below, because you need to sell quickly because there's pressure there. Most closings would probably be like 60, 90, maybe 120 days. So you don't have a ton of time. The only way the bank is going to bridge your mortgage or give you money to bridge is if you have a firm deal. So it puts you in a bit of a pressure situation. So in a situation where you find, let's say, your dream home and you want to buy it first, you have to make sure that you sell, and you might have to be in a position where you take less than maybe what you think you might even get if you waited a little bit longer, right? Like, isn't that kind of how it would work on the buy side, right?
I would agree.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then with that, if for some reason you don't sell your house in time and you need to close on the property that you've purchased because it's a firm deal, you're going to lose that $50,000. That's going to stay in the listing brokerage's trust account. And for some reason, if they put that house back on the market and they don't get $1 million, but they only get $950, they're going to sue you for damages for that extra $50.
Yeah, there could be legal implications.
And even more, because if they needed to close on a property and they can't close because they don't have the funds, it's a chain reaction, and we've only seen that once. It was a bit of a disaster. So if you're buying first, my suggestion would be have a backup plan, whether it's family, whether you could pull equity to close, or just be very, very sure that you can sell very quickly and you don't really need a specific number. You have room to move on the price that you sell in that situation. And that's one of the reasons why Merilyn even said she doesn't, and I agree, you're better to sell first. Mer, on the selling first side, you kind of reiterated some of the points, but when you sell first, what is the benefit of that? Maybe just go over that. I know you talked about it, but kind of by selling first, what kind of happens and why does that give you? You said there's more money in your pocket, right? You know what you have. And I guess what's the worst case scenario on that point?
I think the worst case would be, which is on the flip side, when you sell first, is am I going to find what I want? Or if there's properties that I was eyeing at the time I was getting my house ready to list it, and then that time until it did sell, are the ones that I liked at that time still available? So am I going to get what I really want? And what is the options going to look like? But right now, I think, say, for example, I were to do that now, like I said, I'd have already a backup plan so that I don't feel as though I'm not finding what I want or what I loved sold, or, I'm settling. So I think if you go into that with that mindset that, again, worst case scenario, we don't have to rush. We could rent for 6 months, or we do have extended family that would take us in until that period where you would find something and then wait for the closing to come along and be able to move in. I think that's important too. So if I always think out worst case scenarios and finding solution for those, let's say obstacles that we have, I think that just provides more of a peace of mind for me.
Yeah, so basically at the end of the day, when you buy first, the worst case scenario could be is you purchase something, you don't sell your property, and you either got to come up with that money through family, through friends, maybe through a private lender where rates are higher, or you don't close on the deal and you can lose your deposit and get sued. That's the worst case scenario on the buy side if you were to buy first. On the sales side, as Merilyn said, the worst case is you sell your house and you have nowhere to go and you either rent or you move in with family, you got to store your stuff and have to move twice. Maybe the absolute worst would be you sell and then the market increases 10% and you lose out on some money, you got to pay a bit more. That could be like the absolute worst case. but we're not seeing that in a kind of balanced market like that. So that comes down to someone's risk tolerance and the location that you're in and how much inventory is in your property. But the question to buy or sell is ultimately on the owners of the house. But we're here just to give you what the scenarios are, and it's up to you guys to know what you can stomach. The other thing I wanted to quickly mention here is that technically people will say, well, what about a sold conditional conditional on the sale of my property? Okay, that's a condition that we're starting to see in
certain areas, yes.
Rural GTA,
exactly.
Outside. In GTA proper, it's not so much.
We don't really see that at all in Toronto, but we do have one right now on an escape clause sold conditional.
And basically how that works is that the condition reads that you purchased the house and it's conditional on financing and home inspection, but it's also conditional on the sale of their property. Now, there's a time period there. So it's either a month, days, 30 days, 3 weeks, whatever you want it to be. During that time, that house can still be on the market and be shown. Now, the reality of it is if it says sold conditional escape, some agents might not show it. But if it's a really nice house, you might get some people through. Now, for some reason, if an offer comes through by another agent, the first people who purchase have 48 hours to either firm up the deal or they back out, and then that
release.
Yeah, they release, and that listing, that seller can now pursue this other offer.
And a deposit to the original buyer would be returned with the release. Yeah. That's how the clause reads.
Now, what ends up happening sometimes is that person's house sells, and then it firms up, and great, it's done. The reason why a lot of people don't go for that in Toronto or in the GTA and in a lot of proper areas is it's a lot of paperwork for a hope and a prayer that the house might sell, especially if these people aren't, listing it at market value. And sometimes it ties up the house for no real reason. And so if it's a hot product or something like that, you're not going to tie up a house because you might know that in a few days you might have someone else bring an offer, and then you have to let these people know, and it just makes it a bit of a headache. But we are seeing that. But the thing with that is even in a perfect world, you might find the house you want, you do conditional on the sale of your house, and then for some reason you're just in an area that your house doesn't sell, and that 30 days could expire, and the deal might fall through, and they're like, well, no, we're going to go back on the market, and you haven't sold, and you're nowhere further than you were,
Well, that, and also they could come along and let's say at 28 days from their 30-day condition and say, well, we need another extra week or two because we have an interested party that's saying they're going to submit an offer this weekend. So at that point, it's just, it gets to be, it's a waiting game.
Yeah. And the thing is these are the conversations we have with our sellers and even on buyers, and why we wouldn't suggest doing certain things, right? But this all plays into the buy or sell first. It's not as easy as, do you think I should buy or sell first? We have to look at your inventory, the type of property you have, the location you have, the timing. Like, I mean, if you're listing right before Christmas, I would give it a lot more time than if you were, say, listing in a spring market. So that question, these are the conversations myself and Merilyn have with sellers, and we allow you to make that decision. But it's more than just, do I buy or sell first? There's a lot of, you need to figure out what your comfort level is, what your backup plans are, to be able to make an informed decision on something like that. Amen.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah,
I would agree.
And that's one of the toughest, I think, things that people can't get their head around.
And I would say percentage-wise, we probably have, looking back, probably 80% sell first. What would you say our ratio would be? How many of our clients sell?
I'd say first? Right now, sell first. Now, I always mention this, but I don't think we're ever going to see a market like this. But if you were in, 2 or 3 years ago, you're definitely buying first, because things were like hotcakes. You're under 1 month of inventory. You got to find a house, because they know you put your house on the market and it will sell like in multiple offers. We're not in that market anymore. Rates are higher. If it ever changed, then maybe we'd have to update this podcast. But I think for the foreseeable future, in a balanced, normal type of market, you're probably better off, selling first, unless you have a higher risk tolerance, or you have funds to kind of close on the new house without, getting sued or going into a lawsuit. And I think we're both the same on that.
I agree. So the question was, what percentage would you say our clients in the last year or so have bought first, or versus how many percentage have sold first? I'd say 80.
I'd say more than, I'd say like 90%. I think there might have been one where we bought and then we did an offer date and we got it done, but it was like, I think the majority of our clients are choosing to sell first. Yeah. Even if they have places to go, they still sell first because they have, cash in their pocket. And some people still think the market might come down a little bit too. So you sell at a higher, value. I think it's going to be more balanced. But again, it's a preference thing. Our job is to just point out the benefits to both sides and maybe the negative portions of both sides, and then they make the decision on what they can stomach. And it's like anything else, right?
Sure.
But quickly, what would you do? You're selling.
I'm strong. I am team sell first.
Even if it's in a better market, still kind of sell?
Well, if we were, like you mentioned, about 3-4 years ago, and it was the heat of the market, and we know that we would sell, right away with multiple offers, then maybe I would look at buying first. But right now, definitely sell first.
Yeah, I agree with her. And I think the majority of agents would probably say that too.
Yeah.
So, that's the fifth, I think, point. And then that's a big one. We took up a lot of time there, but that's a big point. But then after that, I guess, like once you have, your motivation, your property value, you understand your numbers, you kind of have an idea of where you might want to live. You think about whether you put a sign in the lawn first or you start looking. Then it's a matter of setting a plan and moving forward. And that's where, when we sit down with clients, we try to get, a plan. And I guess the way we usually do it is we sit and we kind of go, when would you like to be in your new house, right?
So let's say I say we're in the month right now of February, and I say I'd like to be in my new place by, summertime, June, July, and I have a child that's going to be starting school in September, so I definitely want to be settled by summertime and take my time to, I might want to do a little bit of cosmetic renovation. So what does that plan look like in motion?
So a lot of times what we'll do is, okay, you're having cocktails on July 1st on your new patio. Great, beautiful. That's good for everybody. So you look at that. The average closing is probably 45 on a quick turnaround to about 120 days on a long closing, but I'd say budget 60 to 90, which is 2 to 3 months. So if you're moving in, let's say end of June or first week of July, because you want to change schools in the summertime, you go back June, May, let's say May or April, you want to have the house purchased, which then means if you want to sell first, and let's say it takes you a month to sell, you're looking at a spring market. You're looking at maybe start prepping, having these discussions, maybe, even in the fall, the year before, but like by February, you're starting to have talks, maybe decluttering, doing that kind of stuff, getting the house prepped. And then you start the strategy. So it could technically be like a 6-month process, technically. Like it's not just, hey, I want to move and you start right away. It usually is about a half a year process, I feel like. Do you get that same thing? Like how would you go about something like that? If someone, let's say someone wants to move by Christmas, they want to be having Christmas in a new home. When do you think they should start kind of looking? Let's say they had a condo. Let's say they have a condo, they're downtown and they want to move into a house by Christmas, and they've contacted you in June.
Oh, they contacted me in June. So I would say then getting it ready for end of summer. August is typically quiet. So then I would say having it ready by September to hit the market, have the place ready, that it shows well, declutter, have it ready to be photographed and, ready to hit market.
Yeah. And then, with the expectation.
Especially because the condo market right now is saturated. So that's even taking longer depending on the building and the location. There's a lot of inventory right now.
Yeah, different strategies. So, and then, some people, once you get on the market too, because a lot of sellers are like, well, I don't know if I'm going to like houses. So what ends up really happening is you list, and during that listing time, you might start going to open houses. You might start, we go out and see some properties. So you feel comfortable about where you want to be. And then once your property's sold or sold conditional, then you start kind of really focusing on where you want to be. You'll have an idea of what your price is, your numbers are and you can attack on a house that you really like, if it's there, if the inventory is there. So I would say, like, we've gone through a big chunk of stuff. There are other things that we go over in our presentation and when we speak in person to clients, but these are the 4 or 5 main things that I would, that we suggest you sit down and you think about, because if you are stuck, it's probably one of these issues that are arising that you're unable to kind of get past. And if you need someone to just talk it through with or whatever, we have these conversations all the time. Like I said, we've moved hundreds of families and upsized them, and we feel like it's beneficial, whether you do it on your own or if you need, the advice or the help of realtors. And again, I think this is our 20th year now too. I think this is our 20th year in the business, so we might have to have like a little, or like a birthday hat on the next thing or something like that.
May is actually the date. So, yeah.
So basically, to end this thing, when you're upsizing, so the main things are, number one, motivation. So, motivation. Why are you going to move? Make sure both people are on the same page. Timelines.
Yeah. Let's look at the budget. Let's look at the numbers financially.
Job size. Then we get into property value. So get an agent out there to give you an evaluation, even if it's early. At least you have an idea.
That, and also considering another important factor is with a bigger house, right? Let's say we're going from, now we have a townhouse and we're getting into a detached, larger 3,000 square feet. What does that look like to carry the property? Because larger homes require more maintenance. The property tax, depending on the location, will be higher. In certain areas like Toronto, we have the double land transfer tax. So let's look at also what is not only what does the numbers look like on the sale, but also what is my future
like your carrying costs
look like as well.
Yeah, so that all comes down to, you got motivation, property value, so finances. Gifts, do the math, then understand your numbers. Like Merilyn's saying, figure out what it's going to be, how much more you're going to be spending a month on mortgage, on property tax, on if you have a pool in your place, how much utilities, right? Commissions, land transfer tax, lawyer's fees, so all those, get those numbers down and get an idea, and that'll help with an agent giving you a valuation on your house at current market price. Then we get into money versus value. So Merilyn spoke about, just location. Do you want to spend the same amount of money in a smaller house, maybe closer to the core? Do you want to go out to a different area and have more space? And you kind of went over, how we, the wish list, how we navigate around that. And then after that, we just spent a lot of time on that. The buy yourself first. I mean, there's a lot of different things that, come into play there, but we're there to explain that to you, and then to also guide you make that decision. It's very important. That's a very tough one because a lot of emotions there with something like that. And then you set your plan in motion. Merilyn usually goes to the house and tells you what you gotta get rid of and declutter.
What we need to bring in and change this light bulb because it's been burnt out and it won't look that great on film. So, and
then we set a plan. And once we set a plan and we work backwards from when you want to be moved into your new place, 99% of the time we hit that goal once it's set. So, the reality is if you are looking to move, looking to upsize, if you feel like you're running out of space, you have your pets and your kids and everything are on you, even if you think you might not be able to afford it, it is worth going through this exercise to see what your real value is, what you can afford with the new rates. If there's penalties on your mortgage, like there's a lot of things to do, and we're here to help you with that. Yeah. So I hope this has provided you with a lot of information. And if you do want a one-on-one or want to be invited to one of our seminars, reach out to us, send us an email at info@amrg.ca. We would be happy to connect with you and go through this and much more to kind of niche down to what you actually want, and I think it will help. Mara, any final last words for our listeners today?
I would say, again, sell first, but obviously every situation is unique, and we definitely are here to help support and guide you through this journey. And we look forward to an opportunity if you are thinking about doing something in that. Yeah.
Words of wisdom. So until next time, take care of your real estate, your wealth, and your overall health.